Let me get started by introducing ourselves. I'm Bijan and founder of PM Exercises and Product Monkey. I've been in a product role for over 10 years. At PM Exercises, we offer two things: interview prep, for which we're very known for, over 100,000 community members, and an AI product manager learning program. And one of the things that I can tell you is that I did not like the fact that I had to spend so much time creating Jira tickets for my engineering team, whether at PM Exercises or anywhere else. And this has always been a challenge for me. And the reason it's been a challenge for me is because on one side, it's one of those things that nobody actually likes to do. It takes a lot of time, it's very manual. And on the other side, it's one of those things that actually has a direct impact on the velocity of the team. And there are a few ways you can measure that velocity. One way is you would see that teams are basically moving much faster. Tickets are getting approved with less challenge. They get rejected less often when you have a lot more detail. And all these impacts encourages you to actually submit a more detailed version of a Jira ticket. But in reality, it's hard. Everybody's busy. It's kind of difficult to find a time to do it. And sometimes you don't do that. So that was kind of the problem statement for me. Here with me is Niraj, and Niraj has been an AI and data engineer for about 8 years. And Niraj is actually one of the alumni of our AI product manager learning program. He did a session on RAGs just a couple months ago, or about a month ago, and he's going to be doing a workshop on the concept of RAGs in a couple of weeks. So we're really looking forward to that session as well. But he's also been helping us improve Product Monkey AI, and we'll talk about what that means over the next few slides and what that journey has looked like for us. Okay, so that's a little bit of a background about ourselves. Quickly, what we're going to go over is history of Product Monkey AI. What does the current tech stack look like? Why do we think that the tech stack is important? Kind of becomes more obvious as we'll get into a quick exercise that we're going to do together to think about what is the North Star metric that would be relevant for us, because that's going to impact our direction and the set of things that we're going to prioritize. Then we'll talk about some of the challenges that we face, some of the things that we've learned. I think it's a very good learning for anybody who's building on Gen AI. We'll do another quick exercise that will go over some of the solutions that could exist for getting closer and closer towards our North Star. And then we'll talk about some of our plans for addressing them. I think it's going to be hopefully a fun session for all of us. So with that said, let me quickly tell you guys about Product Monkey. It's been around for about a year. We have about 10,000 users or so. There's some good companies that are using it, a lot of different companies. And there's some interesting user behaviors that I've seen that I did not predict at first. And you'll see them in the feedback section. So for example, one individual who really loves the solution has said, my colleagues are very surprised, how detailed my tickets are and how good quality they are. They think of me as a hero, but I've really made sure that they don't know how I create the tickets. So this is a double-edged sword, because on one side, we're getting a lot of, positive feedback, and people are saying this is a great tool. On the other side, we're facing this adoption channel because people are saying that they do not want to tell their colleagues that they're using Product Monkey. And the reason for that are a couple different things from my research. One is data. Companies are concerned with where their data is going to sit. They're going to upload images, and what does that mean? Maybe we will be using it to do something that we're not supposed to do. That's one concern. Another concern we'll kind of learn more about in the next couple of feedback, but this is a very interesting behavior, and for that reason, we do see a lot of users actually signing up with their personal emails, not their company emails, right? Another interesting thing that we've heard, somebody said, I love your solution. I've recommended it to my PM lead or director of product, and they've said, what would be your job if you outsource the Jira tickets to Product Monkey? And it's a really interesting question. It's almost like, is there anything else that you would be doing as a PM? And of course, the answer to that question is yes, there are a lot of things you would be doing, but that's a very interesting feedback that we've heard. It shows that maybe on the leadership level, when we're thinking about adoption, we will be facing some challenges because maybe the VPs or the directors think that this is making the staff lazy, right? Another interesting thing that we've heard is that this came from a product design lead that said, we really like your solution. We suggested it to the PM team to start using your tool for giving us feedback and for giving us more detailed Jira tickets, but they kept rejecting it. And now what we have done is the design team has signed up to Product Monkey and they are using it directly for generating tickets for their own team. And that's a very interesting learning as well, because it tells us a couple things. One, we're entering a world where if PMs are not delivering on some of the expectations of them, maybe their counterparts now have other ways of addressing those needs. And what this means is that we have to kind of think about ways to stay relevant in the environment that we're working in, because it could be that maybe now 10% of our work could be just outsourced to another party, but maybe 50, 60%, 70% of it could be done down the road with the right AI assistant. But that was a very interesting observation for us. And another thing that it told us is that our target users are not only product managers. In fact, we've seen a lot of business analysts using it, project managers, and product designers, and engineers in various teams. So, and then one more thing that I thought was very interesting. Somebody said, you're really outsourcing the monkey part of the job. And we're like, okay, that sounds like closest to what we have in our mind. It's also one thing I would mention, it's free for the AI product manager learning program members. So hopefully you guys can actually benefit from it as well. So I want to give you guys a quick demo. And the purpose of this demo is not to really kind of share with you what, what this thing is all about, but kind of show you at a very high level how it works. You can watch the video here, but I think what's more important is to kind of see how the tech stack comes together. We'll talk about that in a minute. At a very high level, you can upload your images. You can actually use a particular link from Figma. You will be extracting that image. And as you can see, once the image is distracted, you can provide some additional detail to kind of give the AI engine a little bit more context on what you're trying to create. We'll see how that becomes more relevant in a minute. And then we'll be using that to create tickets. So for example, here we just said finding electric vehicle chargers, right? And then there might be a team that says, oh, I need to actually provide some additional focus areas. So you could actually kind of open this, select the areas that are important, and then that will enable the platform to actually create tickets for particular areas. And this is very important, especially when you have a very complex interface. Like for example, if you go to the Zoom homepage, if you go to the Amazon.com Zoom homepage, you can imagine there are so many ways that the user could be interacting with it. It takes a few seconds for it to load, but just to kind of to make the best use of our time, I'm just going to continue. But you'd be able to basically select a particular area and select it, right? Click on focus. But it just takes a few seconds to load. I'm going to continue. You can describe your user flow. You can select what your ticket format looks like. The problem that we were trying to solve here is that every team has a different ticket format, and we wanted to address it. And then you create the tickets. And then the other thing that we realize is that, and we'll talk more about this from a product perspective, every ticket is different. There's variation from the large language models, and then there's also variations in terms of quality, perception of quality from every team. So we tried to address that by really making it interactive so that you can do things like, oh, click on a button and create another ticket. And to address some of the concerns that were related to privacy of the data, we will see in a second that you will also be able to kind of wipe your data. But once the ticket is finalized, right? Once all this is finalized, you might decide that you want to edit them or you want to add another ticket for the images that you created. You can also delete all of them, as I mentioned, but you can actually inject all these tickets to your Jira, right? So that's at a very high level what the flow looks like. There are some additional functionalities that enables you to have a more detailed ticket that is that offers higher quality. For example, you can upload sample tickets. We'll pass that as a prompt. You can select a particular language that you would like to use. One of our interesting learnings was that we have a lot of users from developing countries that would like to live by the standards of North American companies. So, for example, we have a lot of users from Nigeria. And the Nigerians really like our platform because they think that this is a great way for them to kind of become, meet the bar of quality in North America. So that's what it is at a very high level. I want to go back to our PowerPoint real quick. Before we continue, I'm going to quickly pause and see if anybody has any questions, or can we kind of now talk about some of the ideal outcomes that we have in mind. All right, let me see if I can see if there are any questions. Okay, perfect. No questions. Okay, so ideal outcomes. There are a few things that we've thought about. How do we decide what's ideal? What's an ideal outcome? And a couple of things that came to mind. One is like, ticket quality needs to be very high, but this is very subjective. It's not very objective. And this gets pretty hard to think about, especially when we consider the fact that every team's structure of a Jira ticket is different, right? So one team might have a lot of detail, another team might not have a lot of detail. So we thought, like, how do we actually maybe become more objective? One way we thought about it is maybe we need to think about the number of edits that are made by the users before they send the tickets to their project management software, whether it's Jira or something else. But we also thought maybe that's not sufficient because maybe they send the ticket to Jira thinking that it's good, but in fact, this could be creating other issues. For example, it could be creating the issue where the tickets is created, but it keeps getting rejected by the engineering team or the QA team because it's not really providing meaningful content. So we thought maybe there's another way to think about it, and that's like maybe we need to think about, can we reduce the percentage of times or the number of times that a ticket gets rejected, right? So for example, if on average a ticket gets rejected by the engineering team, 2 times before it's finally approved, if we can bring it to 1 time, that's one way to reduce the number of increase the velocity of the team. Another way we kind of thought about it is maybe that means ultimately what we want to do is reduce the time it takes to work on 1 point of work in a ticket, right? And this is, you might be wondering how we can extract that information for a particular team. Some of this information is actually available through the Jira API, given that we're integrated with Jira. So that's going to make it possible for us to actually kind of get a better sense of what sort of process our users have, and then make sure that, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just going to quickly accept these people that are trying to join our session. Okay. And that would be kind of a good way for us to see whether or not we're having an impact. Now we're going to do a quick exercise here. I'm going to say, let's give ourselves a couple minutes, given what I just shared, and try to think about some ways for us to basically define the North Star metric. And the next slide, we'll go over what we've come up with, but let's give ourselves 2 minutes. Everybody, you're welcome to just like kind of use the chat to share your thoughts on what you think should be the North Star metric, based on what I was just saying, like how important it is for us to think about the quality, making sure that we're really thinking about um, the um, the ticket quality being so good that actually impacts the velocity of the team, right? That's really the ultimate goal. What would be some good North Star metrics for us? Curious to know what people think. Let's give ourselves a couple minutes, and then we'll go from there. So I'll come back in 2 minutes, but feel free to just use the chat section to type it, and then we'll kind of discuss that together more. And there's no wrong answers, by the way, so just like feel free to share your thoughts. All right, who's got something that they want to share? Is there anybody who's interested in kind of sharing what they have in mind? Would be great to get a couple of suggestions. Okay. Number of landed outcomes, number of learnings. Um, okay, thanks. Thank you for submitting one idea, and then we'll talk about it in a minute. All right. Who else is interested in kind of sharing with us what they've learned so far? Looking forward to hearing. Number of iterations on a ticket. Very interesting point. Very interesting point. Yeah. I'm curious to know, David, if you can share your thoughts on what you mean by number of successful outcomes. How would you define that outcome or number of learnings? That would be great. If you're available, David, and you can share, go ahead. Okay, from the objective laid out in the quarterly QR. Okay, fair enough. Got it, got it. Okay. All right, so I'll kind of like jump right in and we'll go over some of the ideas that are suggested. I think it'd be a fun exercise. We can all kind of talk about it. One is number of landed successful outcomes. One thing that I was wondering is we should be probably really laser focused on the things that we have control over, and maybe less on things that we have less control over. So I tried to kind of narrow that down a little bit, but happy to be convinced otherwise. But that was one way for me to kind of say it needs to be something that's more related specifically to the ticket. One idea that's very interesting from Kiran, number of iterations on the ticket. So we thought about this at first, and there is some value in tracking this. There's a couple learnings that we had along the way. One was that people actually don't mind iterations at all. They are kind of thinking of it as like a chat GPT output where you are expected to optimize it and improve it. And if it's zero iteration, it could mean two things. It either means that it's perfect, and the other thing that it could mean is that maybe it's not good enough to be used at all. Now, you could tie it to the number of tickets injected into the Jira, right? With no iteration. The other thing that we learned is that in many cases, people still are super happy with using the tool, iterating on it a little bit, and then injecting it into Jira. So we went back and forth on how important it is to count the number of iterations, but we arrived at make it easier for people to iterate but look at the number of tickets that are actually finally injected, because that is an indication that we were able to at least, save them maybe 80% of time, and they came back and reused it. Number of tickets included in the current sprint. This is a very interesting one, because a couple of things that kind of comes to mind. One is that what we thought about is maybe we need to think about the ratio of the tickets in the sprint that are coming from us, right? Like, because there could be a lot of other tickets that they're creating, a lot of backend related tickets. And the way Jira works, it's sometimes tricky. You cannot necessarily have all your tickets for every level of the tech stack associated with them. So there has to be a way for us to know which ones were actually possible for us to generate and which ones were not. For example, as you notice, our tickets are more suitable for a couple scenarios. One, it's more suitable when you have an involvement from a front end side. Backend, we can't really add a lot of value, and it's important for us to understand that weakness. Maybe there needs to be some sort of a solution down the road, like a flowchart, but we don't have that today. The other thing that's very important for us to notice is that our system works today better for a scenario where you're creating tickets for a new project rather than improving an existing project. Now, we try to address that a little bit by adding a functionality that basically shows the area of focus and you describing the user flow. But that also becomes a really, really important piece of information to have. And what it means is that even though initially we thought that everybody could just use the tool, as we spoke to people that use the tool, we realized that they're mostly using it when they're launching a new product or completely new feature. Whereas in reality, PMs usually spend most of their times on improving an existing feature or an existing product that's out there. Another thing that is mentioned is number of positive, negative survey sign-off results. Yes, this was an important one, and we relied heavily on this as well. So one of the things that we did was, I wouldn't say this was our North Star metric. The reason being, initially at first, we thought it was very important, but our learning was that users coming to the site, in many cases, they actually just are trying to try this new technology out of curiosity. They see the tickets, they get very excited about it. And if we have a survey, they're probably going to give it a 5 because of the novelty factor. But whether or not they're actually going to use it is another question. Because at that moment, when they're looking at it from a novelty factor, they're not going deep. So it might be a kind of a wrong signal sent to us if we assume that that signal that was given to us is an indication of their happiness. It might be an indication of their excitement with the novelty of the platform. So that was one thing that we learned, is that the survey result is not very reliable. Then let me see what else we can kind of talk about, a couple other ideas, and then we'll move on. Daily active users and time on site. Interesting, and I'll come back to the one from Shivanki in a second. Daily active users definitely something we paid attention to a lot, but at the same time, we have to be aware that because it's a novelty, it's a new technology, many people are here to just try it out and not necessarily use it frequently. So we're pretty careful with like kind of separating the first timers from those that come back. And typically, I think that if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember what that ratio was, but there is a standard ratio actually in SaaS that they say if something like 60% of your users are coming back, that is an indication that you have like some sort of product market fit, right? I think our number was about if I'm not mistaken, 40% or something, or 35%. So like I said, just like sharing these things that are not for the purpose of growing the business, but just because I want to kind of share with the PM community as much as possible. Number of clarifications asked by the engineering team. Great idea, very hard to measure. very hard to measure. How do we know? Because we're not deeply integrated with their systems. So sometimes it's hard for us to know what sort of conversations are happening in the background. Anyway, so I thought it's kind of fun to see, what are some of the, challenges with defining our North Star metric. Let me kind of show you guys what we kind of more or less have used. A couple of things keep in mind. We said number of tickets injected into Jira without edits. That could be one indication. Now we have to also be very careful about this because of the novelty factor again. We have to make sure that this is really representing people that are using it again for the purpose of actually using it. So we thought this kind of brings us other things to take into consideration. Like first of all, what percentage of tickets they represent within a sprint that they represents how impactful it is. And we should also pay attention to the quality of the tickets that are final, right? Are we reducing the number of rejections and are we increasing the velocity? So that was kind of like how we arrived at it. So first we look at how many of them are perceived as good enough to get into Jira. And we look at it both with edits and without edits, because it sounds like people don't really mind edits. They actually find it a very normal step in the process. And then the next thing that we did is we kind of paid attention to what happens to the journey of the ticket after the ticket has actually been injected. Now, at a very high level, I'm going to go over the user flow, and then we'll talk about the tech flow, and then we're going to do another workshop on how we can improve it and some of the challenges that we face. So first, like I said, you upload the photo. The first thing that we try to do at a very high level is we try to understand the context, right? What is it's been uploaded? I'll tell you guys in a bit what that means. We try to inject all the user preferences that we've collected from the user to better guide everything that we're doing in the backend to generate higher quality tickets. But then we would be generating some tickets that are presented to the users. But after the tickets are generated, user will be optimizing them. So as you guys have noticed, we have a lot of kind of, edit, optimize, regenerate features that are there. And this will hopefully result in submitting to a ticket. But like, how does that actually work step by step in more detail? This is really what it is. We receive the images. The first thing that we do is we try to categorize the images, and we're using Custom Vision for that. And what Custom Vision does from Microsoft is it basically labels the images or the set of images as whether they're like a marketing image or marketing page or mobile page or form or like, other types. And the reason this is important or e-commerce. The reason this is important for us to do is we've realized that if you know what type of images have been uploaded, right, then you can actually use this information to have a prompt that is a lot more meaningful when we're actually trying to create the detailed ticket. So this is the value of us categorizing them. And we're constantly improving them. For example, one of the things that we learned is that a lot of people are uploading flowcharts, right? But flowcharts are actually really, really hard to create detailed tickets because it just gets too complicated. There's so many different edge scenarios. So if it's a flowchart, sometimes we actually inform the user that we're not able to support that right now. And then we're able to use that information to create a better experience. But how do you actually categorize them? On Custom Vision, you can upload about 50 images that belong to one label of your choice, right? It could be 50 images that represent 50 different marketing pages, right? And then it'll basically train a model. It'll create a small model that basically detects marketing images when you upload them. And then every week you could go back and say, oh, look, you missed these 3 marketing images. You can basically say this was a prediction error by Custom Vision. It'll retrain itself and then it gets better over time, right? So over time, we do a better job at categorization. Then we extract the text from the image. And there are a bunch of tools like that. So Niraj will kind of get into this in a little bit more detail. But once you extract the images, you're able to actually once you extract the text from the images, you can use that in your prompt to create better quality better quality tickets, right? So this is very important, especially if the user uses the focus feature. Now we can actually also detect what is in the focus area of an image, and then use that information to create tickets that are more accurate, right? Next thing is we try to summarize some of this context, and this is very important, especially when the user has also uploaded some sample tickets. The user has selected a particular format that they want to generate. So, and maybe the page has a lot of text, right? So all this stuff kind of becomes more important. And once we have this, a summary, then we can send the context and instruct the GPT depending on the type of category that we identified here, right? We would send the context and the prompt to GPT and say, give us the title of the tickets, right? The first step is to creating the titles of the tickets, and that the number of titles are also a function of the amount of context that exists on all these different images, right? Because like if you have like a simple mobile page that has like one button, right? Then an Amazon.com page, the number of tickets that would be generated for these two scenarios would be very, very different, right? So once you have the titles, then we actually ask ChatGPT or sorry, GPT to generate the deep details of the tickets. Here we would be continually passing a lot of the context that we gathered here, right? So now GPT understands that in a lot more detail what we're asking it to do. We're basically, asking it to play the role of a system that is generating tickets on Jira, blah, blah, blah. We might be telling it we want the ticket to be this format. This is a sample ticket that is uploaded by the user. Then the ticket is submitted, ticket is generated. Then the user is able to optimize the ticket, right? As we talked about it through some of the UI interfaces. And eventually, hopefully, it results in them sending the ticket to Jira. So this is at a very, very high level. This is what the structure looks like today, right? I want to pause here and then see if anybody has any questions before I pass to Niraj. But is there any questions anybody has before I continue? Okay, no questions. Sounds good. So let me pass this to Niraj. Niraj, I'm curious to know, do you prefer that I would be sharing, or do you want to basically share your own screen and go through this?
It would be better if you shared it.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool. 1 second. Give me 1 second. I think, am I not sharing or no, I'm not. All right, cool. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone. So, like Bijan told, we have two important tasks as part of this product. One is to convert these images and get the text out of these images, and the other one is to use the title to get a detailed summary of the PRD. And we are hosting all of our services on AWS Lambda. We have created Docker images for converting images to ticket names and converting ticket names to ticket. Our front end is also hosted on AWS. Now let's talk about how do we convert images to ticket names. And we are using a bunch of services, but the most important one is the Google Vision API. It's quite reliable and stable, and the results are also quite promising. We also use some other user data and some post-processing information as part of our services. And most of the stuff is hosted on AWS. Next, Bijan, can you move to the next slide? Yeah, so this is at a very fundamental level, this is the algorithm. First, we get these images, we convert these images to PM tickets using Google Vision API, like we get the text out of this Vision API. Then we use some text processing algorithms and GPT 3.5 to create these summarized tickets. We also tried GPT-4, But in our case, we noticed that GPT 3.5 is giving much better results. And then the last step is using the summarized ticket information to create Jira tickets. So first we generate the ticket titles, and then a separate prompt is sent to GPT to get more details of the ticket. Next. So now I wanted to address some of the challenges we have faced. First, the quality of tickets is still quite low. And it's very hard to deliver these tickets, the results consistently, because GPT keeps returning different results. So our goal out here is to have high recall. And this is one of the challenges we have been facing. And what is considered as a good ticket is very subjective in nature. Different users have different requirements. What is considered good? Next. Yeah. So now, Bijan, we can move on to the workshop.
Got it. Okay, cool. So before we go over what we're doing, actually, we're going to take another couple of minutes to kind of brainstorm again, think about some of the ways that we could improve the quality of the tickets. And, just to kind of give you a quick summary, like I said, the ticket variations are always there. Every team has different set of needs. We try to inject as much context as we can that we gather from the user Jira, user text, focus area, using the right version of GPT that gives us the best quality. But there's still variation, right? There's still variation. So we're always trying to think about how do we push this further. So we're going to do a quick exercise here again for 3-4 minutes, 3 minutes, let's say. People are welcome to also share their ideas again, and then we'll go over what we're actually doing to improve the quality of the tickets. And hopefully that would be also a good learning experience as well. So I'm gonna, again, like kind of come back in a couple of minutes, but please use the chat section here to share your thoughts, and we'll go from there. All right, so one question that came in is there any additional context other than the image collected from the user in the workflow? Very good question. Very good question. And the reason I like this is because there is always additional context, right? So and as a PM, I always kind of have to think about like what is the balance between friction versus obtaining that information? Because if there's so much friction, the user does not want to share that, and they're like, it's just easier for me to just like do it myself. Especially when I've realized that in many cases, the time that the first time that people decide to seriously use it, right? The very first time that decide to seriously use it, not the first time that they try it out, is like a night before the deadline that they have, because they've made a promise that, oh, by tomorrow I'll have all the tickets. And then they're like, oh my God, I only have a few hours. I'm just going to use PowerMonkey to quickly create the tickets, right? So it becomes an important question, like what's the level of comfort that the user has with providing additional context? So here, we thought about a couple of things. One was make it easier through the UI to incorporate, to obtain more information from the user, right? For example, if you noticed at the time when I showed it to you, there was a button that would say this is a front end only ticket. It turned out that about 50% of the users only wanted tickets for the front end, right? And it turns out that if you can actually share this context to ChatGPT, to GPT, it significantly improves the quality of the tickets. So we're like, okay, this is a pretty easy one. You just like press a button, you turn it on, and then all of a sudden the quality of your ticket goes up. So that was one thing that I can mention. We thought that was very important. But additional context, like we thought focus area is very important. Um, Another thing that we tried at some point was audio and Loom, where you can just like kind of describe what you'd like to see or what's important to you. We realized that it was too much of a friction and the users didn't really like it. I think we only had about 1% on using that feature. So we turned it off. And it makes sense, to be honest. You don't feel comfortable just like recording your own voice, not knowing where that file is going to go. Sometimes that could take 3-5 minutes. We saw a few people constantly re-recording it because they were worried about the quality of the voice that they're uploading is not good. And we're like, okay, that's creating more friction for the user. But feel free to share some additional context and I'd be happy to kind of reflect on those as well. So lower temperature and RLF, yes, that is an important one. I'm curious to know if maybe Niraj, if you have any point on the feedback side and the temperature and RAG. RAG is actually something that we'll briefly talk about in the next couple of slides. But I'm curious to know, Niraj, maybe you want to kind of take what David has shared and then we'll continue.
Yeah, like I also had it in one of the slides. To improve the performance, the accuracy, we could also use RAGs to like get a vector database, put all the PRD documents out there, and then extract the relevant documents, and then send that context to GPT. Of course, that requires a little bit of effort. We have to clean the data set. We need to have high quality documents in the vector database, and lowering temperature is of course a tunable parameter. And with the current settings that we have, I think we are already doing a good job. We can of course play with those parameters. I've not tried out RLHF, but that's an interesting concept. We could definitely look into it.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that now that we have a lot of data, we could potentially live in a world where things like RAG and a kind of a fine-tuned model with more human feedback is developed that is more targeted towards our use cases. So that could be a path that results in a significant improvement in the quality of the ticket. One thing that we have to kind of keep in mind is that variation that exists among every single user. So even if we fine tune a model, we got to make sure that we still allow for enough variation in the ticket structure and everything, because every user has a different definition of a good ticket depending on how their team has been structured. Also, one more thing that I realized I thought was very important to kind of share. A bunch of users actually shared their, they connected their Jira to our database, to Product Monkey, and we realized that in many cases they don't even have a good ticket themselves. So there's almost like two scenarios. In one scenario, you got to find what's a good ticket in their system and you try to create that, right? In the other case, they don't even have good tickets. And in that case, you kind of have to come up with a good ticket for them, right? You have to kind of propose a ticket structure for them. And it's important for us to be able to distinguish between these two different types of user groups, right? Larger context window, yes, I think, as much context as we can get, the better. But this was something that we realize is very valuable. If there are any other ideas, feel free to just like share them here and, we'd be happy to kind of share them with you as well. But do you want to maybe, Niraj, continue on from here?
Yeah, I mean, I did cover the RAG part that was in my slide, but you can have a look at it once again. So one of the ideas I had was we could use a very naive approach to improve the similarity metrics that we have. We could use a TF-IDF vectorizer, but there are, of course, more advanced algorithms that we can use. And if you move to the next slide, uh, I had this idea that we could use RAGs. We create a vector database of all for clean data set of good PRD stories, like what is considered good. That is, of course, subjective, and then use that to get the context and improve our results. And then that context, along with the prompt, is sent to GPT or any other open source model, and that could already improve the summarized results of the tickets. And then we, of course, integrate this with Jira.
Got it. Thank you so much. I can see somebody posted a message. Let me quickly see what they're saying. Knowing that each PM has different styles of writing tickets, like you said, different ticket structure, what if they're presented with options and templates and let them pick one and then create a story based on the chosen template? Um, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And to be honest, at some point, I think we're going to test that. But for now, one thing I can tell you is that we initially thought maybe I'm kind of quickly going back to what I was presenting. Let me just quickly go to here. Give me one second. If you notice, we got this section, right, the ticket format, right, along with sample tickets. And we thought between these two, we can extract the template, right? This is kind of more modular. But I agree with you that maybe it makes sense to replace this from a template because then it's just easier for the users to select the template that they like. Yeah, that would be another way. So the next point from Kiran, won't Custom GPT do better potentially with more detailed context and outcome expectations, like Jeev mentioned? Yes, yes. We're gonna try that at some point, and we're gonna see if that's gonna generate a better quality of the outcome. I think one particular part that we have to kind of keep in mind is whether or not it maintains the flexibility on generating different types of tickets, because maybe we're not covering all the different variations of tickets that we're seeing. But now that we have over 10,000 different data points, I think we have over like 30,000 images also and over 30,000 tickets. I think that would basically allow us to potentially have like some sort of a model that's some sort of a trained model that's a lot more meaningful, right? So that's a very good point. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Let me just see what else is there's anything else that we wanted to cover. Give me one second. No, that's it. I think this is all we wanted to cover. So like I said, this is not like our whole company roadmap, but I thought we'll kind of share a little bit with what we're doing and what is our learnings have been and like what is kind of the number one thing that we're trying to solve. It seems to me that the UI and the front end is not necessarily the bottleneck in bringing the retention to over 50% and over 60%. The bottleneck is just like us figuring out a way to make it easier and easier for people to receive tickets that can actually be used right away. Because then at that point we can actually say we've solved the real problem. I think we're doing this for a percentage of people right now that are very happy, but we're still not covering all the different edge cases. And on top of that, there is also this other concept of people uploading like all kinds of different images. Like as they get excited and they use it for a couple front end scenarios, then all of a sudden they kind of go all the way to the end and they upload, like I said, like a flow chart or a really complex diagram representing the backend structure, and they're like, give us all the tickets. And those are pretty hard because it really goes back to how the backend has been developed. So the more you want to learn about the backend, the harder it gets for us to be very meaningful. But the solution to that, at least at a high level, is that we are more and more aware of the tech stack of the client through the Jira integration. And we can use all that information, whether it's from RAGs or passing information directly to Jira, to create higher quality tickets. So I would say that our journey for the next probably year or so is really going to be mostly focused on improving the quality of the tickets for any type of user. So hope you guys found this session helpful. This was a session that came at the request of a few members of the AI PM cohort. So there you go, as you guys asked, and please feel free to use it, continue using it, and give us feedback. Like I said, the goal is for you guys to learn as much as possible. Hopefully this kind of gives you a real view of some of the challenges that would exist, right? All right, sounds good. So thank you so much again. If there are no other questions, we will be wrapping up the session in a few minutes. All right, so I can see a couple people in the cohort 6. I'm curious to know if anybody's interested to kind of sharing their experience about the cohort with the broader community. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just like randomly picking somebody. Kiran, I don't know if you're interested in sharing. Putting you on the spot here, but in case you are,
No,
yeah.
happy to. The cohort was really good. The learning from Kai, the whole experience of it, along with the folks that we've worked with in the group, all of that made the cohort really, really good. The momentum should continue, and that's the onus on us, right? And these community sessions, I think, will keep that momentum going. So really appreciate it and would encourage others to join in as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the positive feedback. And by the way, the cohort 5 people, you guys are going to move into the alumni Slack group and the alumni dashboard. You'll continue receiving updated learning material as we develop some new learning material for cohort 6 and onwards. And you'll be invited to some private events that we'll be organizing. So yeah, congratulations again. You get to receive your certificates. Welcome to the alumni channel. And with that said, we're going to wrap up today's session. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you guys next week.